Hey everybody, you're watching another TFC Express video. This one, we dive into the world of Mayans MC. I wanted to say Sons of Anarchy there, but that show is done. But today we tackle the Mayans MC pilot, and to help me do that is the one of the co-hosts over at the Fandom Cantina podcast and the currently untitled Game of Thrones podcast at the Fandom Cantina Network. It's JD. What's happening, man?
What's up, brother? Stoked to get into some Mayans MC. Sons of Anarchy lives on in spirit, and almost in actuality in this show, which really has the same look and same feel. You really feel transported right back into that world of Sons of Anarchy with the oversaturated color palettes and just the way Kurt Sutter portrays the life of these motorcycle clubs. It's like no one else, and it feels great to be back in this world.
Going in the build up to this show, I think had a lot of fans worried, excited but worried because they canned like 2/3 of the cast they had originally casted for this show, came back with a new cast, reshot the pilot, and you walk a fine line. Fans, I believe most fans want to see that this is the same world that Sons of Anarchy, Sam Crow, Jax, Opie, Clay, and company all took place in, but also not have it be just an extent like Sons of Anarchy 2.0. And I think it was probably tempting for Kurt Sutter and company to keep going there. And at the same time, they had to be careful to make sure it wasn't a completely new experience as if it didn't exist in that world. And you hit it right off the top. I think the one area they knocked it out of the park in is this absolutely feels like the world that we left 4 years ago, 2 years in Showtime, I believe, when Jax gets smoked by the semi.
Absolutely. You know what? I absolutely agree with you that waiting for this show to come, I felt a little trepidation as a fan because, of course, love Sons of Anarchy, love Kurt Sutter, but then we saw him stumble with the back bastard executioner, and I really had to wonder if Sons of Anarchy was going to be a fluke and if he was going to be able to give us anything else of that quality again. And then we heard these stories about the trouble in the production of this show. So, a lot of anticipation, but and all my fears are laid to rest. He really seems to have found a balance here between giving us what we're familiar and giving us something new that we love. And this show opens up I think is a direct reference to Sons of Anarchy, and especially the final moments with the death of Jax Teller. Uh, Opening shot is of a border road in Mexico, and we see a sign first that says "Divided we fall." I took this immediately to be a message about Sons of Anarchy because, Sons of Anarchy really fell apart because of their internal kind of struggles that developed over time. Um, so I was taking it as a message about unity in the club being the number one um, philosophy of this show. A lot of people took it to perceived it as to be a political message because it's a border wall, so a message about Donald Trump perhaps. But then we immediately pan to a dead crow lying in the center of the road, which of course invokes the image of Jax Teller from the finale of Sons of Anarchy, and then. There's a dingo chewing on it, and wolves are the theme of this show. By the way, we had crows for Sons of Anarchy, for Mayans MC, the iconography is all centered around wolves instead of crows. So we have this really great symbolic scene of this dingo chewing on this crow, and then the hero of our show, Ezekiel Easy Reyes, comes rolling along on his motorbike and rolls right over the corpse of the crow. A clear message from Kurt Sutter. Sons of Anarchy is the past. This is the future. This is the next chapter. Let's go. And from that first 30 seconds, I was hooked into this show.
Yeah, no, I think you need to do that too. Like, you don't want to completely forget Sons, and I'm sure as this show goes on, they are going to dip into that pool as they have people available. Um, and I think that's cool, but you can't completely cross over that. This needs to be its own show. It needs to stand on its own 2 feet, and I think so for your first season, which is only 10 episodes. You'll I don't think you'll see Sam Crow in season number one, uh, but who knows? In the first episode, we get to see the Reaper back, and that's cool and all. And it almost has like this, I believe, off the air. You mentioned Superman like moment where
Yep, for sure.
camera pans
Sam,
up to the Reaper and they're coming to the Mayan safe to save the Mayans.
we actually do see Sam Crow already in this season because there is a great scene in this movie, sorry, in this episode where a chapter of Sons of Anarchy come and save the day, and I was immediately texting you saying, who is this chapter, because I didn't recognize that, I didn't remember them from the show, but you of course did. So why don't you fill us in on that?
Uh, well, the essentially the charter, one of the charters that convicts Jax at the end for killing the own member. The dude, I don't know, I don't have the actor's name, but the guy that played the villain in Terminator 2, who was also in multiple episodes of Sons of Anarchy when it was on. It's essentially his division of it that comes to the aid of the Mayans, and it's a nice little nod. You get to see the Reaper, and that's cool. I knew there was no chance you were getting, Tig or Happy or Chibs in the first episode. I don't think you'll get them at all in the first season, but I do think we'll get them at some point. Which is good though, because this is the Mayans MC, and you want to, have a chance to really get to know the characters in the show. And I think, even though this is a quick review on the TFC Express, hence the name, I have to say some of the characters that stood out for me that I really liked is I liked Angel and Ezekiel, like Easy. I liked, I believe it's their dad, the dude at the butcher shop. He was cool. Where do I know him from?
Edward James Olmos, you know him
Yes.
from many places, but most likely from Battlestar Galactica as Adama.
Uh,
Great
uh,
actor, great actor.
I thought that just so much of the cast clicked right out of the gate. Miguel Galindo, who is the son of the guy who ran the Galindo cartel in Sons of Anarchy. They're back. They're the what look to be the villains in this one. And that's another moment where you can say, okay, well, we can't have all these characters pop up again, but the villains from Sons of Anarchy in seasons 4 and 5, they're back, essentially. Slightly different person at the head. It's his son. But I he was portrayed really well in the first episode, I thought, and he was a dick. He was a rich fucking dick, and it came across awesome to me.
Yeah, definitely the number one villain on the show. The main evil force that we're going to be battling in this series seems to be the drug cartel, and there's intrigue upon intrigue in this episode. And I don't want to go too long. I know this is a quick review, so I'll just try to give like an overhead view of what my impression of this is. It's as I was saying before, it doesn't feel like Sons of Anarchy season one. It kind of feels like Sons of Anarchy season four and beyond. It's got intrigue upon intrigue upon intrigue. There's three major twists in this first episode that let you know that nothing is as it appears in this world. Everybody is working against each other in some way. Everybody is in danger from each other in some way. And there are so many threads that we're following, um, you're immediately drawn in. And I feel like on top of that, it's very similar to Sons of Anarchy in the way that it portrays this world in this really gritty, really realistic uh, light. But it's kind of adding a new element in with this plot line involving Mexican rebels. There's a Mexican rebel group in the storyline who are all children who were orphaned by the drug cartel. So they're kind of a rebellion against the drug cartel itself, and they're portrayed as these enigmatic characters who, have camps filled with computers and in the mountains, and they wear like scary children's masks. So like that horror bunny mask that you've probably seen in many different movies and TV shows. Um, So this feels like it's something a little more fantastical than we've ever seen in Sons of Anarchy. It feels like it's going to be a more political show than Sons of Anarchy was, and it's going to have like an extra level of storytelling beyond just the politics of the club. It feels, what I'm trying to get at is, I feel like the politics of the club are not going to be as completely important as these bigger world storylines that we're dealing with in this show. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with it. I think that there's going to be a lot of diversity, and not just amongst the cast, but in the storytelling as well. You mentioned that there's threads going all different ways from the beginning. You didn't have that in Sons right away. You really
Right.
didn't. Not in the first episode. In this one, if you got up and went to the bathroom and came back 5 minutes later and didn't pause it, there's a chance you probably missed something integral.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And what it worries me just a little bit is that part of the love of Sons was that you fell in love with the characters, and that's because the storytelling in the beginning of that series was just portraying the characters and getting to know them and getting to know their internal dynamics between each other. And this series throws so much plot at you at once. It's kind of like we're kind of assuming you're familiar with these characters, even though they're not the characters we know from Sons. I guess maybe our familiarity with their world is supposed to substitute for familiarity with them as people, but I don't know if we're going to be able to pull it off successfully or not. I hope so. I hope I can get into these characters the way I did with Sons. That's all.
I think it's going to be hard because they're going for a certain type of demographic with this show and viewer. But even in the first episode, like I said, I felt like I connected with a few of the characters,
Yeah.
and that's a start. And the villain was believable.
Yes.
Miguel Galindo. I bought him totally. He seems like a rich snob, and if you
Yes.
piss him off, he's going to put a bullet in the back of your head.
Or chop your arms off.
That too.
Yeah.
I think one thing that is going to be in this show in season one is the presence of the tellers is still there. Clearly, the evidence is there with Gemma's brief cameo, which we're going to get into in another video and what it could mean going forward. Uh, this is, we were going to do likes and dislikes, but we're not going to go there. I'm like in the middle between this one. It was cool to see her because, like, oh, hey, there's Gemma. But I was never the biggest Gemma fan. Like, don't get me wrong, she was an amazing character in the show, but she was that character that I couldn't wait to see get her head blown off. So,
It
uh,
it felt like she had maybe too much influence over Kurt Sutter in Sons of Anarchy. Like her character just became too
yeah,
important and just got stupid.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And there is a rumor out there that we'll address in our next Mayans MC video about, that cameo might not be the only appearance for her in the show, and we'll see where that leads. But also, if you've seen the trailers that led up to the show, there's a couple of different Jax Teller gravesite things that happen. I'm assuming discussion's going to happen around them, and he's going to come up, and that did not happen in the first episode. So I'm assuming that at some point this season they didn't just film it for, hey, watch this, and then it's not in the show. That'd be a little bit of cheap
Yeah.
salesmanship, but I think that we're gonna get that, and the presence of the tellers is not completely dead. But getting back to the Mayans, what the show is really about, I loved seeing Alvarez again. He has the El Padrino on his patch, which in English translates to the Godfather. Uh, I really like this episode, dude, and knowing that it's only a 10 episode first season, I have to say that it really got off to a real good start, and I'm intrigued to see where it goes.
Absolutely agree with you. I'm hooked. Like I said, from the first 30 seconds, I was hooked into it. A little bit of trepidation, only minor things here and there, but I think the show got off to a great start. It's given me some characters that I'm interested in that I want to follow. I want to see what happens next.
I couldn't agree more. So out of five, I'm
Uh,
gonna give. Oh, did you
Go
have
ahead.
something else you want to add?
No, no, go ahead.
Uh, Out of five, I'm gonna give the first episode. I think it was also like 70 minutes long too. It wasn't just like a 45 minutes and done.
Yeah.
First episode for me gets a 4 out of 5. I really liked it.
Absolutely agree with you. 4 to 5 from me too. And one thing we didn't mention, The swearing. One thing about Sons of Anarchy that never felt right was they weren't allowed to drop f bombs in that show. So they used Jesus Christ like 100 times in every episode to substitute for it. F bombs in this one feels more realistic. Welcome change.
Uh, totally agree. I can get behind, a lot of F bombs. Alrighty, don't forget to check out our next video, which will be about Gemma Teller and what her appearance means for the rest of the season, and what changes it could bring to the show going forward. And then we'll obviously review episode 2 next week. Don't forget to click the subscribe button. See all the cool content we put out here at the Fandom Cantina. You can also follow us on Twitter at Fandom Cantina. You can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Fandom Cantina. And we'll see you next time. Leave a comment below. We'd like to hear what you thought.